Hey, Rich, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Super excited to be here with you, Gabe.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm excited to have you on. This whole idea of unmuting yourself so that someone can go and for lack of put it, help more people, be more effective, make more money. And you're going to share some great tips. You have this 5-step formula to help you unmute yourself and get on camera even more. And I'm really excited for my people to hear that. Yeah, and so I guess my thing that I always like to do is I like to hear your story though. I want to have an understanding of like, how did you go from whatever you were doing before all the way through to now helping people get on camera and be much better at it and help them grow their businesses. So could you share your story with us?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So do you remember that game Dodgeball that we
Oh yeah, totally.
had to play in grade school mostly? Well, for me, that was just sheer terror. Every recess, that game would get played, and I would just go into a panic because I was the kid who always got picked last on a team, never a captain. And when it came to dodgeball, I would always be the first one to get hit in the head with that dang red ball. And it was it wasn't a very positive experience for me. And so, I was a little kid, and I, in my little kid brain, kind of made up some stories about what I thought this meant. And what I started to believe is that, people don't like me. Um, Groups are dangerous. And it's really, really much better for me to stay alone and out of harm's way, because when I'm in a group, people are going to try to hurt me. Like, those were the interpretations that took place over time. And, it would happen, and it didn't matter what the sport was. I was always going to get picked last. There'd be that inevitable, like, there's one guy left on the fence, and the conversation between the two captains, like, I don't want him. We're like, well, I don't want him, and then I'd get stuck on someone's team, and then, I'd get hit in the head or whatever. And it's just how it was. All my brother and all my cousins were like superstar athletes, and I played the clarinet. So I was just, I was different than the rest of my family, and than a lot of the other kids. And so I started to just view life in a certain way when it came to being around other people. And so I learned over time, basically I developed shyness. And shyness is a trait that you learn. Babies are not born shy. They're normally, loud and noisy, and then they learn, they get conditioned, right? And I'm also an introvert, and now that is genetic. We can't change that, extrovert, introvert, or some combination of that. That's just how we're wired. But I had this combination of, I was really shy, very self-conscious, and an introvert. And as I started to get older, those ways of being really shaped, how I experienced life. Had lots of great experiences, lots of happy things happened in my life too. But when it came to work later, right? I happened to get into sales. So there's a combination: shy introvert guy in sales. And I ended up being really, really good. Like, I could cold call people. My first job was at Culligan Water Company. I was 14, and we literally had a phone book, and we would just dial and hope someone would answer and convince them that their water was not good. And that's why our technician had to go out and test their water. And I was really good at setting these kinds of appointments. And so I ended up getting into sales, and everything was fine until I got to New York.
Okay.
And in New York City, this is, fast forward now, many years. I was 28 years old at this point. In New York City, very different ball game. If you don't keep moving, there's 1,000 people behind you who want to take your spot. Like, it's just like a very fast paced environment. And for the kind of work I was doing, I actually had been in Chicago prior to that and got a degree in television producing and production. And I was working for a PR company in New York. And part of my job was I had to help develop clients. I had to do sales, and uh, this was a different ball game because that meant I had to go out into events. I had to go out into the city and find people that could become potential clients. That is very different than just cold calling people out of a phone book.
Oh yeah, way different. Yeah.
And I didn't even know what networking meant when I first got to New York. Didn't have to do that before. So I kept hearing like, "Oh, you got to network. You got to learn how to network." And so I had made a friend. He's the kind of guy that walks into a room and everybody knows him. Everyone lights up. And back then we had Palm Pilots, and he had a Palm Pilot, and he had every single person's name in there that he had ever met. And he showed me, and I said, like, what? How do you know all their names? He said, because I have it all in my device. I record everything, where I met them, when I met them, what they said to me. This is networking. And if you want to learn how to do that, a good thing to do is to go to a fundraising gala. And I said, oh, that sounds fun. That sounds, exciting and glamorous. Hadn't really been to a big gala before at that point. And I found an organization that I wanted to support. Tickets were $500. And this was a couple decades ago. So that was a lot of money then, still a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out how to make it happen. Got my, gala outfit together. And it's the night of the gala. I get to the Sheraton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. And I could see as I walked up to the property, lots of other, men and women coming in the various entrances, but they're very dressed up, women in their gowns, the men in tuxedos. I was not dressed to the same level that they were. And my brain started going wild with, you don't belong here. This is dangerous. These people don't like you. All those same kind of thoughts that I used to have on the playground as a kid just came rushing back up. You're not good enough. You're not dressed well enough. Who are you to be here? These kinds of thoughts. And as I walked through the lobby of the hotel, I started to have a panic attack. And with every step, it felt like I had cement blocks on my feet and I was walking through molasses until finally I just stopped. I literally couldn't move. And there were two voices in my head. One was, you don't belong here. It's kind of like the devil and the angel. This is dangerous. You should just turn back around, go home, get on your couch with a pint of Chunky Monkey and call it a night. And the other voice was the voice of a coach that I had started working with. He was happened to be a sales coach who was a mindset trainer, and he had already planted enough seeds, thankfully, that I could hear like him saying, Rich, if you're willing to be bigger than your fears, you can do anything. Of course, I didn't believe him at that time, but I heard it. The seed was planted, and that was the voice I was going back and forth with. Go home. You can do it. Go home. So somehow I chose to listen to my coach, and I, picked myself back together, lifted my head up, and I went up into that gala. And there was 1,000 people at this event. I didn't know it was going to be this big. I'm a shy introvert guy who now knows I also have social anxiety. So I didn't know that until actually fairly recently. So I walk in and there's a sea of people, all those people in those, beautiful outfits and gowns and all of this. And I remembered that when you're networking, your job isn't to meet every single person in the room. You just need to meet a couple of people and have quality conversations.
Yeah.
And so I just went with that. And that was the night that I started to build my first business network. And it inspired me and terrified me to learn how to get good at this thing called networking and connecting with people for business purposes.
Mm.
So I kept going. After that night, I kept going to other events, much smaller events, and I was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not taught how to network.
Hmm.
Most business people, salespeople don't know how to do it properly. show up to an event, pull out their card, buy my stuff, you know?
No.
Um, and I had to learn all this stuff. And so long story short, I went from this super shy guy to becoming known in New York City as one of the most well-connected people in my community. I became very involved in different organizations, serving on boards, leading, in volunteer capacities. I continued to work in the world of sales for other companies at that point, but was now training my salespeople on these mindset tools and techniques so that they could really be grounded and powerful in the work that they were doing. And because of the reputation I built for myself and the number of connections I had created, I was tapped to start a chamber of commerce for the LGBT community in New York. And nothing like that had existed before. But purely because of my network that I developed, they asked me to be the guy to head it up. So in 2008, the height of the financial crisis, which I'm sure you're very well versed in the timing of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We started this chamber of commerce while corporations were firing and letting go of staff because they had to. We walked into places like Chase, American Airlines, United Airlines back then, American Cancer Society, Goldman Sachs, you name it. We were walking into these major corporations, sharing our vision for this chamber and the business case for why they should support us, not from a marketing perspective, but from a business perspective. Tapping into the power of this community and the money that is spent through the LGBT community. And we were very successful at having organizations become corporate partners for large amounts of money. At the same time, they were firing staff because they had to downsize. And none of that would have happened. None of that would have happened if I had not done the work on the mindset level. And if I wasn't willing to be bigger than my fears, doubts, and worries about what people think about me and who I am and what I have to offer, if I wasn't willing to own my own power and learn how to do that, who knows where I'd be right now. But it all goes back to mindset training and development. And when you couple that with sales and the kind of training salespeople get, when you couple that with having a vision that you believe in, whatever it is that you're putting out into the world, amazing things can happen. And by the time I left the chamber, which was 5 years, I ran it for 5 years as the president and co-founder. Hundreds of businesses in New York City, small businesses had joined, scores of nonprofits had joined, as well as major corporate partners, all working together to support each other in coming out of the economic disaster that we were in at the time, in building our community. So that's a little bit of my background and what led me to becoming a mindset training expert. And now I'm coupling that with teaching business owners, coaches, course creators, speakers, experts, solopreneurs, how to tap into the vision that they have for the people they want to serve, how to develop the confidence and the ability to be able to look into a camera or stand on a stage and to deliver what you have in a way that really lands over there for your audience, because you're not worried about how you look. Does your hair look okay? Did you say it wrong? Did you mess it up? What if they don't like me? All those thoughts that happen to people, you're able to not come from that place, but come from your place of power. And that's the kind of work that I do now, is this combination of unlocking your stories, putting them out to reach your audience, and doing that from a massive place of confidence.
That's amazing. I have to say, when we first met here a few weeks ago, I didn't pick up on any of that. I had no sense that you were a person that had that social anxiety and had the 10 tons of cement around your feet as you're trying to walk into that gala. I mean, your story is very inspiring. I mean, there's got to be one or two people listening going, holy buckets, that's just like me. So my question for you and for everybody that's listening, how did you make that change? Now, you sounds like you were working with a coach.
Yeah.
How did you make that change from holy crap, what the hell am I doing here, to I got this? How did you make that change?
Well, it didn't. I would love to say it was like this magic pill that I took, and then voila, everything changed. But it took time. I'll be honest. The mindset training. If you think about it, at whatever age, the younger you are to start doing this work, the better off you'll be.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in my late 20s when I very first started getting introduced to it, and then in my through my 30s, really, I'm 51 now. Was kind of this big renaissance, if you will, in learning these tools and technologies, and that it's even possible that you're not stuck with the deck you were handed, so to speak, right? A lot of people don't know that. They think, well, this is just how I am. My mom was like that. My dad was like that. So it's how I am. It is partially why you are that way, because you learned it from the adults that raised you, because they were doing the best they could do at the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what happened was shortly after a couple years into living in New York, it was right around 9/11, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I got hired to work at a hypnosis company. Very, very successful hypnosis company based in New York City. And it was a sales job, and I needed a job, and I said, I'll take it. And I was already interested in like this idea of hypnosis, but I had some thoughts about what it was, like most people do, that they think it's either they think it's fake or like weird voodoo, or it's going to manipulate you and steal your stuff when you're not looking, right? There's like a lot of negative connotations to it. I didn't care. I needed to work. So
I needed a job. Yep.
I needed a job. So part of the training there, this is what really changed my life, was I had to learn hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. These are tools for mindset training, and really effective tools. So as part of my job, I had to learn what we were selling. That makes sense, right? And I became certified in hypnosis as well as neuro-linguistic programming, and that made a huge difference. But what really made the difference was my sales trainer, who was relentless with me. He needed me to succeed. He hired me, and he wanted to make sure that I succeeded for the company, but also for my bank account.
Yeah.
Every limitation, every limiting belief that I had came straight to the surface in this job. And I'm trying to tell you the shortest way. The job was this place was packed every single day. And this was before the internet, before internet advertising, and like even using the internet in any way remotely the way we do now. It existed, but this was not the mode of marketing. Newspaper marketing was still like huge. And so this company would run ads, and they tested their ads relentlessly. So it was like a science. They had ads running in all the papers about how they could help people to stop smoking or to lose weight or to study for tests, whatever the thing is. And their lobby would just be packed with people every day. So I had no lack of people to talk to, but I would have 30 minutes from the point they walked into my office to them walking out. I had 30 minutes to do a transformation. And the transformation with these people was this. Most people walked in thinking I was going to knock them out, steal their purse, take their wallet, credit cards, while I've hypnotized them. Tons of doubtfulness and just believing that it's all a joke. However, by the time someone ended up in that office, they probably, for weight loss, let's say, they probably had a gastric bypass. They had some kind of situation where they were in peril for their life was not healthy. Their bodies were not well, and they tried everything to stop smoking or to lose the weight. So this was like their last ditch effort. So they were in severe pain, whether physically or emotionally or both. And they were super, super just like, just afraid that this was just like a weird thing and we were going to do something bad to them. Right. So it was like this combination of emotions. I had to take that in less than 30 minutes and get them to a place of sharing their story with me, hearing if we could help them, and then giving them the solution through the programs that we offered, and ending that conversation with, and that's $3,000. Would you like to pay in full? With a smile on my face.
With a smile on your face. Yes.
And I couldn't do that last part. I couldn't ask them for the money.
Oh, you couldn't do that last part.
Because at that point in my life, that was more money than I had ever asked for at once. And it was more money I had ever received at once. Unless I had, gotten some amazing commission check. But in terms of just how I earned money at the time, I didn't make $3,000. How could I ask someone else for $3,000?
Okay.
So I had mindset, money issues. And my coach, sales trainer, could see that. So here's what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not kosher now, or if it was then, but there was a camera in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side of my wall was the sales trainer, my manager and a sales trainer, both the same way. And they were watching me as part of my training. And if the phone on my desk rang, there was only one reason. It's because they saw that I was going off track in the sales conversation. So the phone would ring and I would be like, oh God, this is not going to be good. So I had to pick it up, smile, and pretend like it was my partner calling to say, I'll see you for lunch. Right. And what they were doing was like, we told you 1,000 times. You said this. We told you to say that. You need to say this word exactly, or this is going to go out the door. Like, this person's going to go out and they're not going to get the help they needed. It's a disservice you're doing to them. And I would just be like, you got it. Thank you. Hang the phone up. And if I didn't say exactly what they said to me to save the conversation, the phone would ring again. And I learned real quick how to keep a sales conversation on track. But in the sales training that we would get, I mean, I went home crying countless times because I couldn't. I couldn't get over the mindset issues that I had that I didn't even know I actually had until this started happening. And I was committed, though, to transforming it. And they were committed to me because they knew that it was possible. They could see what was possible for me. And so I eventually got it. I eventually was able to, very, powerfully be able to ask people for $3,000.
Yeah.
Or more. And be able to get them to the next part of that conversation, which is like whether they had it or not, or how they were going to pay for it, the logistics of it all. But that experience changed my life because I was literally forced, in this case, to face my fears and my limitations, and was given the tools to overcome it. And this is where the mindset work came in, that they would do with us. So that was a major turning point in my life, and led me to the world of seeking more and more transformation type training. And I've spent years since then, and all the years since then, fine tuning these skills, learning new ones, working with people in this capacity. But how I did it was, there's one word that is key. I was willing to be bigger than my fears, doubts, and worries. And if you are willing, don't have to know how, you don't have to even like it. If you're willing, then that opens, from a mindset perspective, that opens your brain literally to the ability to take in new information, to learn a different way, to train your brain in a new way, so that you can operate from a better set of beliefs. And our beliefs, our thoughts create our beliefs inform our actions, and the actions we take produce results. And if you don't like the results you have in your life, you go to the beginning of the sequence, you change the thoughts, and you become aware of, well, what am I thinking? And that's the work I do. That's what I help salespeople, business owners, coaches, speakers, you name it. That piece is what has to happen. Because if you don't address the root issue, then all the tools, all the tips, all the technologies really won't matter, because you're still gonna be in the same place.
That makes total sense. That whole mindset piece. I joined a coaching program for financial advisors here. I'm just in the third year. I'll be coming up at the end of the third year by the time this podcast ends, and the whole thing, it starts off with mindset. It's all about getting your mind right, and then once you get your mind right, like you said, you're willing. It's amazing what opens up. And then everything leads down to the actions, and the actions, it's absolutely crazy. As long as you're willing to take action, things are going to happen. Things are going to change. And like you said, if you don't like where they are, go back to the beginning, change your thoughts, move on to the next thing. And it reminds me of a book. Have you ever read, I think, it's by Jen Sincero. I think it's You Are a Badass. I think, is that what it is? I'd have to look at it. But Jen,
I haven't. I've heard of it.
yeah, it's an awesome book. I mean, she does a fantastic job of pretty much just slapping you in the face. Hey, you're a badass. Figure it out. My favorite line in the whole book is, your brain is your bitch. Figure out how to take care of it and move forward. I just absolutely love that book. I actually even refer to it in my book that's coming up. But your brain is your bitch. Get control of it and move on, because it's true.
It is true. And it's the thing with the brain is it's a miracle how this thing works, right? But it does its job. And it mostly, at the deepest level, its job is to keep you from dying. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it all boils down to protection. And the brain, even though it doesn't a lot of things that we do as humans don't always make sense logically, the brain operating in the background is like, nope, don't do that, because it's going to hurt you, it's going to kill you, it's going to scare you, right? It's just doing its job. And this is where the mindset training comes in, is whatever your default way of thinking or in viewing life, which comes from our parents, those who raised us, our formative years, we're just soaking everything in. There's even research that says that while we're in the womb, that we are hearing the conversations that are being had outside of our mom's body, and certainly the conversations that she's having, and this informs our brain, and our structures of understanding the world and making sense of it are already at play. So it's these deep rooted ways of being that may no longer serve us can't just be wished away or even just thought away. Like the mindset work I do isn't even about like trying to get rid of a negative thought, because that thing is a neural pathway in your brain. Like you'd have to surgically remove that neural pathway if you could find it. So instead you create new ones. And that's what's great about neuroscience and brain technology is our brains, until we're dead, continually can take in new information, learn new information, create new experiences. And everything that you do for the first time, a neural pathway gets created, like a little road in your brain, if you will. And the more you repeat a particular action or thought, the stronger that neural pathway gets, until it just becomes very entrenched. And then it can become the default signal or the default response to things that we're responding to in life. So like the $3,000 thing, like when I would get to that point in the conversation, before really creating a new way of thinking, my old way said, you can't do that. They don't have it. They don't have the money. Like all the thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to create new ways of thinking, like I don't know what that person's capable of. And the deeper thinking was really, I'm here to help someone change their life. And this goes to whatever you sell, whatever a person sells. If you don't believe that it's going to improve, change, enhance your client's life, then you should stop selling that thing. Whether it's financial services, used cars, mindset coaching, if you don't really believe that it's going to impact your client and make their life better, then you should really stop doing that, or address that fast with a mindset coach. But when we believe it, when we know that what we have is of value and that we make a difference and that there are people out there who need what we have in our unique way, when we're coming from that place, then your way of being really changes. And when you get the no's, they're not devastating. They're just you're just one step closer to the one who's going to say yes, right? That's when things like that you get in sales training, like every no is closer to a yes. It's true. But if you don't believe it, then it's kind of a sucky place to live.
It's a terrible place to live.
Oh, yeah, right.
I've been in sales pretty much my whole entire life. I mean, my first job was a paper route. We were out delivering papers. And a little side story, it's actually kind of funny. This is where I think the stories were built in me with asking people for money. I mean, as a financial advisor, you ask for people for money. Well, back in the days when I was delivering papers, I come from a family of 6 kids, 5 boys, 1 girl. We were this melting pot family, and us 5 boys each had 3 paper routes. The oldest brother, his name was Chad, he had one. Eric and Brian had one. Jeff and myself had one. Well, Brian and Jeff are twins, and they're the same age as me. They're a month and a week older than I am. This melting pot, yours, mine, and ours family. Well, Jeff and I would go out and do our paper route. We'd deliver the papers, and we had to go collect money. Well, we're like 12 years old. We don't really realize we have to go collect our money. That's how we get paid. But I don't remember that part of the paperboy training. I mean, it wasn't in there. But we would show up to the house and Jeff would elbow me in the shoulder and in the ribs, like, you're talking to him. I'm like, all right. So I go up, knock on the door, and I just was happy to just talk away. And hey, by the way, you owe us $25. Oh, well, here you go. And every now and then you would learn about the people who were maybe not doing quite as well. Like, hey, my check doesn't show up till Friday. Can you come back on Saturday? Yep, I'll come back on Saturday. You show back up on Saturday, they pay you. But I realized that little bit of asking for money story has been in me my whole entire life. So that's really interesting. Where my brother, there's no way he was going to ask for that money. I had to go ask for the money. So I'd be curious. And he's not in sales in any way, shape, or form now. He's worked his way up into a management position. But I'd be curious. I'll have to ask him, like, hey, do you ever ask people for money? I mean, how's that work for you now? I'd be curious. So, yeah, really interesting. But sorry for the side story, but that makes sense. The stories is what builds us, and those stories is what shapes us, so that we can figure out what to fix and what to change. And I also really like your idea of your science that you shared of the pathway being formed in the head, in the brain. And I guess my question for that, for those that are listening, and even for myself, is that then the formation of habits? Habits what then forms that, which then takes you down that road of your brain, and therefore that's why we try to create these habits that we'll call high performance habits or happiness habits or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. I often will call them thought habits.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've all heard that anything you do with repetition over time, how long there's all kinds of debates, but repetition over time creates a habit. And that's exactly how the brain works. Very, very much like a computer, in that, if I'm looking at my keyboard in front of me here, if I hit the A key, my computer knows what to do automatically, It doesn't say, well, you really should have worn the red shirt today, Rich, not that blue shirt. I don't know. I won't give you the A. Check back in 2 hours. I'll see if that doesn't happen, right? Like it's an automatic response to a stimulus. It's exactly how our brain works. So once the programming is in there, when we get stimulated, when there's a an action that happens to us or around us, our brain perceives this, whether it's hearing it or seeing it, or a combination of senses, takes it in and says, "Oh, it's like pushing the A key, like it knows, oh, that happened. This is what we say. This is how we act. This is what we do. This is what we don't do." It just automatic. So this is why people struggle with just trying to be positive. And I'm all about positivity, but when we try to override an entrenched habit like the one I used to have, when I would see a group of in this case, like in school, like in grade school, right? When that group of guys was going to throw a ball at me, it was always the guys. That was, my brain would be like, "Uh-oh, get ready." Maybe it would say you should duck or cover your face, or it would bring up all the reactions, and I didn't have to think about it. It's automatic. And this is how the brain helps to keep us alive, right? It's how it keeps us safe. But if those automatic reactions that you're having to things that happen in your work, in your job, in your sales conversations, if your automatic response, whether it's voiced or thought, if it's keeping you from reaching the goal, all the positive thinking about it isn't going to change it unless you actually create a different thought habit that you want to have activated instead. And this is where the mindset work, is not a magic pill. It can happen very quickly, but it does take the time and the repetition, because that's the way the brain is structured. So like the neural pathways, one new action creates a new neural pathway. Keep doing that same action over time. It gets stronger and stronger. And then your brain says, oh, this is what we do now. And it's almost like I'm kind of visualizing like train tracks, and like there's like a switch. The train normally went to the left, but now it's going to go to the right. It's like that. And they're all electric impulses. This is all electricity we're talking about, right? So these things are just flying at speeds that we can't imagine, and to do their job as fast as possible, because it's trying to keep us alive and safe. Don't die.
Right. Don't die is what the brain is constantly saying. Don't die. Don't die. Don't die. Amazing. So I have to get you to the, how does someone unmute themselves? So that was the reason I had you on, and I am thrilled that we went down mindset, because mindset, I would almost bet, is the beginning of getting someone unmuted. But I would love to have you share. You've got a 5-step formula on how someone can unmute themselves and get themselves on camera, on video, so that they can help more people, make more money, have a better life, whatever you want to put at the end of that. But share those 5 steps if you would, Rich.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. By the way, I want to compliment you, because there's a billion podcasters out there. Most of them are not also videoing their podcasts. I'm not. This is not to disparage podcasting. It's amazing. But here's what we know. 85, this is from a recent survey from a really big corporate level video company called Videos, actually. You could find this report on their website. Tons of amazing metrics and stats. One that really struck me in their latest report said that 85% of consumers watched a video before they made the buying decision. Said another way, 85% of people looking to buy something searched the interwebs for a video to decide if that's the thing they want. And that tells me that if you're in business, whatever you sell, or if you're in sales, and you're not findable, or what you sell is not findable on video, and 85% of consumers are looking for videos, then you're missing out on leads and potential sales, right? You're not visible. So this is where my whole methodology really is coming from, is that we want to be visible. We want to be seen and heard in the way that consumers now are looking. And a few years ago, the numbers weren't that high. It wouldn't have been 85%. But now, especially after the year of the pandemic and all of us being trapped looking at screens all day long, this is the reality, and it's not going to change. It's not going to suddenly drop. People are accustomed to this. So that's the background for this. So what I'm doing with my Unmute Yourself formula is helping folks to understand that, like, you got to be where people can find you. And how do you do that? How can you do it in a way that feels right and authentic for you? Like, how you might do it, or how you are on camera might be different than how I am, right? And so we want to be real and authentic. And so this is all part of this. So the first step is actually, I call it unleash. And this is where you really give yourself permission to be seen. And I would have started with mindset. You're right. That's number 2. But what I've learned is, in order for the mindset training to work, there has to be a step ahead of that, where you actually say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give myself permission. I'm going to allow myself in what I do and how awesome I am, the badass that I am. I'm going to allow that to be put out into the world. And that's the first step, right? So there's work around that's creating the vision. Like, what is it that you stand for? Who are you trying to help? What do you want to be known for? Those are the kinds of things that fall into unleash. Then we move to the mindset, and then we start to see where the limiting beliefs are. What are the things that are holding you back currently? Again, different for each person. But there's one fundamental thing I keep coming across is fear of rejection. And it shows up in different ways, but like, I don't want you to reject me. And that's a big limiting belief that needs to get addressed. So how do we do that? Mindset training. So we step 2 is mindset, finding out where does a person have their limitations and drawbacks, and how can we create a new set of thought habits that help them to operate from a place of power. Then we get to the third step, which I call unlock. And this is the stories. So this is where we really dig into, what are the things that you've overcome? What do you do now, right? And what led you to it? Like, I'm glad you told a story about the newspaper route, because now you're a certified financial planner. By the way, I know what that is. I know a lot of people don't know what it takes to get that CFP designation. It's like getting a PhD basically in your field, because I have a former partner who has a CFP, and I lived through that experience with him twice. And he's a brilliant guy, and he had to take the test twice. And that's with all the coaching and tutoring, all the stuff that you have to do. Not easy, right? So to go from the little guy on the bike to who you are today, there's a lot of stories that led you into this direction. And so when you know that story, like you just told us, that's a brilliant story about how you've always worked with people and help and asking for money and providing value to clients, right? That's a great example of the beginning of a story that could be fleshed out and put into a format that leads people to say, you know what, I want that guy to handle my money, or I want to find out how he could help me, because I used to have a paper route too, and I know what that was like. It's where we create our stories, like you were saying earlier, create relatability. They make us a little vulnerable, or a lot vulnerable. They tell people we're human, and that's what people buy. They don't really care about the CFP or the certifications or the degrees. They care about, are you real? Are you a human that I want to talk to for many, many years of my life? Can I really trust you? Do I like you? All of that comes out of the storytelling. So we unlock your stories, get them into a format so that you can tell them powerfully, figure out which are the ones. The stories I told you here today, I have told 1,000,000 times. And I will keep telling them because I created these stories to work in a short format. They're true stories, but I learned that those were pivot points in my life. And some people who are meant to work with me might have similar experiences. And so, therefore, I become more relatable. And they know that if I can do it, they can do it too. So, that's the power of the stories. Great. Now we have some stories. Now we got to get you visible and out there. And so this is, using video and other forms. Certainly, writing articles, podcasting, doing live videos, doing recorded videos, just different formats. But I call this televised. This is getting your message out there. Now you got to tell the stories. People have to know because 85% of consumers are looking for a video so they can decide if they want to buy your stuff. Awesome. So now we have content getting produced. And the fifth step I call expand. So this one podcast, and I know you know these things, but this one podcast is brilliant because it's not just an audio, it's also a video. And so you have an immense capability now of turning this podcast into many different formats. It could become a chapter in a book that's a compilation of all of your podcasts. That's a good idea, by the way. It could parts, certain, highlight moments of this conversation can be condensed into a shorter video or a shorter audio commercial that you pepper into your social media or your email list or other places so that people get a little taste of what you do and then they're led to the full conversation or, depending how you use it, to your website where they book an appointment to have a conversation with you, right? So there's lots of ways that your content can then be expanded. And so once you have a piece of video content, what are the ways you can leverage it so that it continues to work for you well beyond that one, 3-minute or 1 hour video that you created? And so when you have all of these pieces in place, they all become this synergistic kind of machine, right? You're out there, you're being visible, people are hearing your stories, they're seeing you in different places, they're beginning to know, like, and trust you. You have become an unmuted authority in your industry. And because 99.999% of the people in your industry are not going to do this because they're not willing to be bigger than their fears, doubts, and worries, you become the leader in your field, right? You become a leader in your field simply because, going all the way back to the thing you asked me earlier, your willingness. And that's just the most important word. So that's what I call being an unmuted authority. You've clicked the, I got that from Zoom and in the last year. How many times do we hear, we can't hear you, you're muted, unmute yourself? And one day I was like, oh, here we go again. And it just clicked. I was like, oh, that's it. We need to unmute ourselves so we can be heard, so we can be seen. And it's so much more than just the Zoom. It's like in the world, like, people need what we have. And if we don't let them know we're here, they're going to find the person who was willing to put themselves out there.
I love the name, Unmute Yourself. Now that I really know the story of where it came from, that's even better. I love that. B, so help me understand then, how do you help people go through those steps? Okay, so let's just say someone's listening right now. They're like, you know what? I get this. I've even done my own research. I see that YouTube is the number 2 search engine right behind Google. I'm in. I'm ready to go. So I've unleashed. All right. Now I think I can get my mind past this. Once we get my mind past this, which that is, in my understanding so far, is one of your specialties. I mean, you've already walked through that fire. You know how to get through that piece and to coach people through that. But now we get to the, holy crap, what are my stories? I mean, how do you pull the stories out, Rich?
I'd tell you, but then exactly. I was like, oh, can I say it on a podcast? No, we need you alive. We need you alive. So there's a lot of tools for this. It is I would say that this is a part that where people get to be vulnerable, right? So there's exercises I do with folks. One exercise is where I personally like if in all the programs I've been. This is one I don't like it. Of course, I teach it, but it produces so many great results, and it's where you go back in time, starting from year zero of your life, and you just start to capture memories that you have of things that happened, and you just keep going year after year. Of course, at 51, it takes a little while to go back to zero now, but there's and there'll be years where you really can't remember, and it doesn't matter what you remember. That's not the point of the exercise, but the point is just starting to get out of your head these memories and these little what could become gems for what would get teased out with some more deeper work into a bigger story. For instance, if you were doing this exercise and you got to, how old were you when you told that newspaper route?
We were 10, 11, and 12 years of age when we were, and actually up until we were 14, 15, then we really got jobs, so to say. But I was 12. Yes.
You're 12. Okay. So like if I was working with you on this, and during this exercise, there's prompts that I'm giving. It's kind of almost like a meditative, open-eyed, but it's a very reflective process. So I'm giving prompts to my clients during this particular exercise to help trigger memories. So I might say, so when you were 12 years old, what were you doing? What was a day in your life like? What would happen? And you might remember, oh, I had the bike, I had the newspaper route. And so these 3 days I delivered newspapers. But maybe you didn't remember at that point that you had your brother made you ask for the money, right? But you remembered the newspaper part. After the exercise, then we would go back and look at key parts and drill down into them. So, tell me more about what would happen on that newspaper route. What, were you alone? Was it just you? I would find out that you and your brother had this route, right? And what would happen when I might ask, how did you make money doing that? And that might trigger like, well, actually, da da da. So it's this is a process of pulling stories out. There's other tools as well. One of my favorite tools is movement of the body. So our bodies store memories. There's whole worlds of science-based modalities that are in the physical realm where the body stores experiences and memories at a cellular level. It's not all stored in the brain. In fact, depending on the system, there are three brains that we actually operate. Everyone knows about the one in our head. Your heart is considered a brain, and your gut, your stomach, is another. And they actually all have neural pathways. They all have neurons. In fact, your brain up here relies on the stomach brain the most to tell it what it needs to do to keep you alive. So when you know these things, and you know that when we move our bodies, it unlocks energy, it moves energy. Doing practices, certain movement practices, before you go into the process I just told you about, like going through the years of your life, it loosens up your memory and opens up your capability of remembering things that you hadn't thought of for years. So there are different techniques that can be used to unlock these stories. Once you have the memory, then there's the drilling down into it. What's the structure of a story? The beginning, middle, and end. What's the best way to tell a story? When you're on a podcast, you don't have 5 hours, but you have 30 minutes. How do you get what took years of your life into 3 minutes and have people go like, oh my God, you said it to me. Like, wow, your story, like that came from lots of practice and drilling down, me working with other professionals in this area. And this is because of the training I have, I'm able to help people do the same thing.
Well, see, and I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate also being alive after telling me that secret sauce. So I understand. I made it through. But the reason I asked that question is that when I decided to start this podcast, I was like, all right, what the heck am I going to talk about? I mean, I can talk about Roth conversions, but really, no one wants to talk about Roth conversions. You get that done in one episode, and there's nothing else to talk about for the rest of the year. And exactly, yeah. I mean, so I'm like, what the heck am I in? And so I can envision someone sitting here going, "Man, I love this. This is awesome. I'm going to get some videos going. I'm going to get rolling. I'm even going to go buy a. I'm gonna just use my iPad or my Mac, or I might even buy a camera. Okay, I'm ready. What the heck am I going to talk about?" And so I love the fact that you have a process to pull the stories out, because really you are 100% right. People relate to stories. It's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years. People relate to stories. That's how knowledge get passed down. That's how things get sold. That's how things get bought. That's how money gets spent. That's how money gets lost. That's how everything happens in the world as a result of stories. And I love the fact that you help pull the stories out, because that was a big piece for me when I was thinking, because I had the idea of a podcast in mind. I had an idea of YouTube in mind. I started recording some videos just for fun like 10 years ago. But I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And the simplest way to put it is I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready yet. I got to tell you a fun little story, and I think anybody that's listening will get a kick out of the story. So I'm a coffee snob from the word go. I love good coffee. And I'm meeting with a client 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm telling him that I had, just had a French press that morning, and I was feeling rather snobbish because we were going to go someplace to a coffee shop and get coffee, and I was kind of interested to see what I was going to have there. And he's like, "Oh, you're a coffee snob too?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, have you ever heard of an AeroPress?" Now, this is like 4 or 5 years ago. Have you ever heard of an AeroPress? No. Okay. Well, here we go. All right. We're gonna have some snob delivery here. And anyways, an AeroPress is a way of making your coffee that is literally just like your hand pressing a thing of espresso. And so you can make a 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, but it's literally like a tube. I mean, it's a tube that you press the coffee down with the water to create an espresso, and it's the idea of a French press, but maybe a French press on steroids. And so my friend, this is a client of mine and friend of mine, he's like, "Well, let me tell you this story." And he said, "So my neighbor roasts his own beans, and he creates these fantastic beans. And he comes over one day with his coffee beans and sees me with my AeroPress. This is my front client. And he then walks back over with his AeroPress, and he makes him a cup of coffee with the AeroPress. And according to my client, it was the best cup of coffee he's ever had in his entire life. And he looked at his neighbor and he goes, "Dude, because I've been living by you for 8 years. You've been giving me coffee beans for 8 years. You've never shown me this AeroPress?" And the guy looks at him and says, "You weren't ready yet."
That was a long training period. 8 years. Wow, that's hilarious.
Yes. He's like, you weren't ready yet. And so you know what my client did? He did the same thing to me. I'm like, "Dude, this is amazing." He's like, "You just haven't been ready yet, Gabe." So he ordered me one. And he went to his neighbor and he got a batch of his beans, and he hand delivered the AeroPress and the batch of beans to me. And I have to tell you, for like 4 years straight, I drank nothing but AeroPress. It was so good. It's like a $35, $40 little piece. You got to have a good grinder to grind up your beans. And it is a little bit of a process every morning, but holy buckets, it's amazing coffee. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, now I'm jealous. Now I need an AeroPress.
You need an AeroPress. But anyways, yeah.
That see? and not to make light of this, but now I want an AeroPress and a coffee grinder, and um, because you told that story, and that's exactly how this works. And so it's highly likely that someone's buying an AeroPress, and some other company who's not even present is going to benefit from that, right? But that's the power of telling stories. And when you end it with a call to action, when we tell our stories, this is so important, because this is where a lot of people who are on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever making videos, they don't include the call to action at the end. If you're not including a call to action at the end of your video or anything you're doing, then that was nice of you, right? But now that person doesn't have a next step to take. And so, and that's actually part of the unlock piece, which is why I'm bringing it up, because aside from these stories, there's also exactly for the reasons you just said, people are like, okay, I'm ready, I can do this, I don't know what to say. Well, before you really hammer stories out, you might need to still be in business, right? So there are ways to use some formats that I've created. I hate to call them scripts because people hate the idea of sounding like a robot, but it's a format that you fill in the blanks and you make it your own. But it's like a no-brainer. Like starting, here's a tip. If you start your video with "Did you know?", you capture people's attention, and all you need is one stat. Like, did you know that 85% of consumers say that they watch a video before they make a buying decision? That's amazing. And if you're not findable on video online, then you're missing out on those 85%. Hey, I'm Rich Oceguera, and I can help you, blah, blah, blah. Click this link to schedule a time. Like, that wasn't even a minute, and that could have been a video, right? That's what I teach people how to do that too, so that that's part of the unlock piece. And
I love it.
that part's easy. We don't have to go through the story of your life to get to that one.
No, no, I absolutely love that. And thanks for sharing that to help people understand that you will take them through the process step by step so that they are able to basically unmute themselves, to button that piece up. Do you then also advise and consult with like what kind of equipment they should do? I mean, just start with your iPhone. Do you advise on that as well for them?
Absolutely. And you're 100%. You sound like you've already worked with me. You have the world's best production studio right here. Whether it's Android or iPhone, doesn't matter. I'm an iPhone guy. The video quality of our phones are better than many professional cameras on the market, which cost thousands of dollars more. And so when you learn some very basic rules for how you would make a video for these more professional purposes, you have it. You already have the first piece of equipment that you need. And hopefully you live someplace where the sun shines, which is most of the world. I mean, I guess if you're way up at the top, you have less sunny days, fewer sunny days than the rest of us. But if you can find natural light and you know that you should look towards it while you're making your video, then there's no other. Then we're just dealing with like, what do you say, and the mindset piece, right? But I start people off with not buying. They don't have to buy any equipment, and then I teach them, well, if you're going to have a camera outside of your phone, what's a good webcam, or why would you have a light ring? And there's a billion options. Here's 3, pick one. I really narrow things down for people, because people get really overwhelmed and caught up in the like, oh, there's so many things, I just can't do it, it's too hard. And there's a lot of people who have fear of technology, or a resistance to using technology. An extraordinary amount of people. It's really amazing. So I try to keep it just really clean. Here's 3 lights. Here's 3 types of mics. Here's what else might you need equipment wise? Light ring, mic, a camera, right? Um, And so how do you use those tools? And then there's more advanced things that, once you have the basics, which is all you need to really get started, then we can learn more, more higher level, usage of equipment and things like this. But it's easy to get started, so it should never be an excuse.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. So that anybody, if they reach out to you for your services, they can feel pretty comfortable. They're going to get pretty much soup to nuts advice all the way through, help you get started, and even help you get that stuff out, is what it sounds like to me. Yep.
Absolutely. And even at the advanced level, it would be, how do you have your own show? Right. Which, that's not a place to start. As you know, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot of considerations. And, we both know this because we both have our own shows. But for some people, they should have a show. And you're very smart to be doing what you're doing because you're separating yourself from the people who aren't willing to be seen. Right. There's many, many, many professionals who it would do them a world of good. I like your phrase, buckets of good, to have their own platform like this, so that they have content being produced, they're providing value, they're being visible. People are like, oh, he's the money guy. I saw his podcast or whatever. Like, I should talk to him. It makes a difference. It's credibility, and it positions you as a leader and as an authority, especially when you're the host and you're putting a light on other people like you are doing with me. That just really accrues to your leadership and authority as an expert in your field. And that's not the place to start for most people, but that's a place that some people can get to. And that is a thing I do talk about at when the time is right. Here's a place that you can take this so that you can maintain consistency with putting your credibility out into the world.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We're going to have information for my listeners to be able to click on and reach out to you. And I'll even have you share in a little bit how people can get a hold of you that are interested. But, this is a podcast about money. And this podcast about money usually has 3 questions that I like to ask people. And the first question is, Rich, what is the smartest thing you've ever done regarding money? And tell me that story.
Well, I have to laugh because it's also the stupidest thing I've ever done with money. So when I lived in New York City, I had the opportunity to buy a condo in Williamsburg, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn. And at the time, it was, well, call it what it is. It was being gentrified, and there were lots of condos being built, and that was not usual for this neighborhood. And so my then partner, and I had the opportunity to, at the advice of his sister, because she actually is a Wall Street, she was a banker as well. And she had heard about this condo building, and there was like just a couple units left. And she's like, you guys, you should really get a place. And we're like, we can't do that. We're like, we're too young, or we don't, like, how would we pay for it? Like all the things, right? So we went to the building. I hated the neighborhood. I lived in Brooklyn Heights. We lived there at the time, which is a really beautiful neighborhood. And now we're like in Williamsburg, which looked pretty crappy at the time. Felt dangerous. I was like, oh God, this is awful. But we just went with it, and we got this apartment. It was like, what? Could not believe that happened. Well, we stayed there for a couple of years, and then in the meantime, I ended up working in real estate as a result. And condo towers were just like popping up everywhere in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, which is the next neighborhood over. So the market was just really hot. And so we decided we should sell our 2-bedroom, 2-bath little condo. We did, and we did really well. And we bought a bigger condo, stayed there for about 7 years, I think. And when our relationship came to an end, the first thing we said, well, I guess we're going to sell the condo. So we did, sold, like that. Offers above asking. We took an all cash offer above ask. And now I had this like bucket of money. Put it in, put it in the bank. And I thought I was just like, woohoo. Yeah, I went to I was already it was already planned, but yeah, I went to Europe. Um, yeah, I'm a single guy now, and then I eventually, found this apartment, and it's super expensive to live in New York. I then started renting, paying more than I was paying for my half of the mortgage after that. So that wasn't the stupid part though. The stupid part was the worst thing was I didn't talk to someone like you. Mind you, my ex-partner is a CFP, financial. I didn't talk to someone to tell me what I should do with that money. And then there was no more money. So it's not funny. I mean, it was like shocking. And I wasn't, being crazy, just buying everything I thought I should buy. There was probably some of that, but nothing radical, I thought. Um, and I didn't have a plan for it. I didn't have I didn't secure an amount of it that, was never going to be touched, because I didn't think I would. I couldn't imagine I would spend all that money, but all my expenses doubled by being single in New York. So that's, and then um, other things that, I was starting a business. And so I was spending a lot of money on things related to that. And then before you know it, it was gone. So that's that. It was both the smartest thing, selling the place and profiting nicely from it, and then not having a good plan. That's the best setup I could give you for what you do.
Okay.
What a team.
I can see where this is going. Yep. That is, yes. It's much like my setup for you accidentally was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. You are right. It was, yes, fantastic team. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how many people do not have a plan for their money. That is one of my things that I try to constantly do is provide a plan for the money. And anybody that ever works with me, the first thing I always say is, okay, what's the purpose? I'll have clients that will have additional money come in. I'll tell a quick little story and then we'll move on to the next piece. Is I have some clients that I've been working with for many, many years. Their kids are now in college, and the kid in college, one of the kids in college is working in the summertime. Mom and dad are paying for college. He's got extra money. And he reached out to his mom and said, "Hey, will you get a hold of Gabe? I want to put some money to work." And she said to him, "Just so you know, when I reach out to him, he's going to ask me a question. And the question is going to be, what is the purpose of this money?" And she said, "So you need to think of the purpose. You're gonna, I'll reach out to Gabe for you, but you need to think of the purpose for the money." And so you always have to have a purpose, no matter if it's that purpose is to give me emergency savings. Is it to retire? Is it to buy another property? Is it to travel around the world? What's the purpose of the money? So I always have to have a purpose. So thank you for teeing that up. That was actually fantastic. Thank you.
I was excited to tell you that story because it's what you do.
Yes, it is. It is what I do. And from experience from your prior partner of being a CFP, you've heard the stories. And thank you, by the way, for recognizing that a CFP is not an easy thing to get. It does. It does take discipline and study and time, and it's important thing.
It's grueling. And I used to joke, like helped my ex partner, Thomas. We'll use his name because that's easier. Thomas. He started out. You might appreciate this. He started out working at a, a a foreign Wall Street bank in New York City. I'll leave them nameless just in case there's any issues. And he was like on the production side. He was like doing graphics like overnight. Like he had some like little obscure job there, and important, but not he wasn't the moneymaker guy. He wasn't on the sales side yet. And he decided he would get his series. He had to get all kinds of compliance licenses, basically, right? Like if there was a compliance license to be had, he had to have it for the work he did. And then somehow, actually, I can say this because he would say it's true. I was the sales guy, and he saw what I was doing and all the like progress I was making. He decided that if I could do it, he could do it too. And he did the crazy thing, which doesn't happen in the industry really. He jumped from, marketing production side to sales. So he got his Series 7, which I helped him study for. And then every license that comes after that on the sales side and leading up to the CFP. And I used to joke that because I had to, do all these like drills with him and, flashcards and running, question and answer, that if I wanted to at that time, I don't think it's true now, I could have gotten my Series 7 with an eye closed because I knew all the answers. But that's not for me. That's for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm always just thankful when people are like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, good. Then I have a business. I'm thrilled that I have a business that I can help people with. It's a fantastic thing. So Rich, yes, I am glad I'm doing it too. And so that takes me to that last question, that what does mastering your finances mean to you?
That is a great question. Well, as you were saying earlier or alluding to, in general, we're not taught how to use money in our society. Most people I know, their parents, whether they have money or whether they grew up wealthy or poor or anything in between, most people I know, their parents didn't have a conversation with them. Their parents didn't do it. Your client did for the son. Like, what's your purpose? And so for me, mastering money is understanding really what is money, how can it be used, why you want to have a grasp of its importance, not from a ego perspective or from like, I want to buy all the Gucci. No, but what can money do for you if you have it and you have it working for you in a good way? And that's something that I didn't learn. I've learned the hard way. Oh, very hard way. But my parents, my mother's struggling right now. She's in her 70s and she was a salesperson all her life too. A lot of independent contracting kinds of positions. And I'm wondering how I'm going to take care of her, because even though she would never ask me to, at some point there's going to be a crossover, and I know that her Social Security is not enough.
Makes total sense
for her to live a nice life.
Makes total sense.
So mastering money, that was your question.
I'll wrap that up with a lot of times the questions that come up is, am I going to be okay?
Yeah, it means that you understand how money works early enough in your life so that you don't end up in your 70s wondering how you're going to pay the rent.
And so
yeah,
your mom is wondering, is she going to be okay? And you're thinking about already, am I going to be okay? And can I help her too? Is kind of what I'm reading into it. And so that's usually the question that comes up is, am I going to be okay? And so if I were to take a little liberties with your answer and say, it might be mastering your finances is making sure that you're going to be okay and be able to help your mother down the road. But that's me adding your answer. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, no, that was a much more succinct way of saying what I said. Yes, and not only her, but me, and my, I'm engaged, I have a fiance. It's my future too. So that's that's a big thing too, and especially, now that I'm in my 50s. Very different than being in my 40s, where yes, I thought about these things, but now it's like, oh. And now I have friends who are in their 70s. Not like my mom is one thing, but like I have friends who are 20 years older than me, but I see, like, I'm like, wow, I'm going to be 70 before I know it. Am I going to be okay? Right? Those are real questions. That's why I said, if you learn this stuff when you're a kid, a teenager at the latest, your life could be very different.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, it's the beautiful thing of time when it comes to the financial planning and the investment advisory world for clients is time is your greatest friend, most definitely. So thank you for sharing that information, as well as thank you for sharing your answer, as well as allowing me to take some liberties with your answer. I appreciate that. Um, how can my listeners find you? I mean, I really think that you could provide some tremendous value and help to my people listening that would like to unmute themselves. How do they find you?
Sure. My website, richawakenings.com. And I actually have, if I may, I have a free gift that I can offer. At the same website, you'll see gift at the top of the website, or richawakenings.com/gift. And that is my mind mastery formula. So I talked a lot about mindset today. And one of the things that I see has made the biggest difference for my clients, and also for people that I trained before I had my own business, salespeople that I trained, because I was always a sales director, national sales director, hiring salespeople. Once I learned these mindset technologies, they had, if they were going to work for me, they had to do this practice every single day, which I now call mind mastery. And it's 3 questions that you ask yourself. Who am I willing to be in order to be bigger than my fears, doubts, and worries? And this is you proactively choosing your state of being that you want to live into for the day, let's say. So you just pick 3 positive states of being, like clear, confident, magnetic. And these may be things that you don't identify with personally yet. Like, you don't feel that way, you don't know yourself this way, but this is who you want to become, right? Because we're laying those new mental habits. So you pick the 3 states of being, and then you ask, am I willing? Who am I willing to be in order to produce extraordinary results from this day? Right? Powerful, confident, magnetic. Great. Those are the 3 steps. States of being. Then, am I willing to be bigger than my fears, doubts, worries, and preconceived notions about being on this podcast, let's say, right? And I say, yes. You're talking to yourself, right, in this process. And the third question is, am I willing to be bigger than Gabe's fears, doubts, worries, and preconceived notions about me being on his podcast? And I say, yes. And that third question is really important, because we make up so much in our heads. Shit. Not only do I worry about, do people worry about themselves, right? But we make up what we think you think about us before we've even spoken to you. Like, oh, he's going to think I'm terrible. Oh, he's going to think I'm going to be a bad guest. Oh, like, we just make stuff up. It's not true. You didn't say that, but I said it in my head, right? So we got to clear that deck too. And so it literally takes 30 seconds to go through these 3 questions. The gift is a PDF download that walks you through the 3 questions and tells you how to use it. And it's the number one thing that I do with my clients that makes a big difference. And if you do it every single day, I've been doing this for decades, by the way. But I chose, I write it on a Post-it. It's in front of me, so that I can keep seeing it in case I forget what I said. Who I was willing to be. And when you do this with repetition over time, you start to develop these ways of being. So in the beginning, when I first started working with this kind of mindset work, I wasn't confident. I wasn't bold. I wasn't charismatic. I wanted to be, but I wasn't. So those were words I often chose, states of being. Now I don't often use those words anymore because I've become this way. Not acting, it's just I created it. So now when I tell people that I used to be shy, they usually are like, "What? But you're so confident. You're so charismatic." Like they literally will say the words that I said I wanted to be. So that's what this gift is. And if your listeners have a business of their own, if they're in sales, they want to get better at just having a clearer, more powerful mindset, then this is a really, really great way to start building that muscle.
I love it. Yeah. Make sure everybody goes and downloads that. That is a powerful, powerful tool. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Rich?
Yeah. The last thing I want to say is if you know that you have this gift to share with the world, you have a message, you have a product or a service that you know is going to make a difference in people's lives, and you're kind of on the fence of like really putting yourself out there, get off the fence. You have to jump. You have to allow you. This is the unleash part. Just trust yourself. Trust that because you're putting out to the universe, like, I want to be more visible. I want to make a bigger impact. I want to help more people. And yes, when that happens, you'll make more money in your business, but the focus is on the helping more people first. If you believe that, then allow yourself to, someone on my show just said this the other day, the couch of comfort. Whatever, however you relate to it, get off that fence, put yourself out there, and trust that the people that can support you to get where you want to get are going to find you because you made yourself available for it, and that there are people out there who are looking for what you have right now, and they're waiting for they're waiting to be served.
Perfect. I couldn't think of a better way to end that. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for being on Solopreneur Money, Rich.
Thank you.